Are you confident? Do you have consistency? How much conviction do you have? I'm Daniel Gomez, the confidence architect, a business strategist, keynote speaker, executive coach, and best selling author. On the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, we will help you unlock confidence to create consistency and develop conviction. Together, we will discover the key that unlocks your confidence. Welcome back to another episode of the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, where we encourage you, motivate, inspire you, and really educate you in life and business. And we bring some experts to just really pour into you from their heart and soul. And today's not going to be any different. So I want you to do yourself a favor right now from the get-go. Get out your pen and papers, because something amazing happens. Something magical happens when you put pen to paper. You retain a lot more information. Your subconscious mind absorbs it because your eyes see it. And guess what? You become smarter, wiser, and you become worth more value. So today, man, I'll tell you what, this young lady is amazing. We were kind of just joking about her name, but she's the amazing Kimmy Seltzer. We want to welcome her to the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show. Woo! How you doing, Kimmy?
Hello, hello. So good to be here.
Well, we're honored to have you here. Let me tell you, I know what the amazing person you are, but I want you to take a moment and introduce yourself to the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, please.
Yes, well, again, my name is Kimmy Seltzer. I am a confidence therapist, an authentic dating strategist, and an image expert. So what does all that mean? That's a mouthful. To really say I help people a lot in all different kinds of ways. I've had quite a journey in getting here, and I'm happy to share my story because honestly, like with all this professional background that I have, really what inspires me, and I know like this is kind of congruent to what you talk about on your show, is my own transformation, my own story that makes me so passionate about doing what I do. And so, I help people in a lot of different ways. And the thing that's interesting is that no matter what people come to me for, like it could be just updating their style so they feel more confident. It could be trying to find love, which I often, kind of focus on for men and women, or maybe just like feeling more confident socially. At the end of the day, it's all about confidence, right? It's how we feel about ourselves. And this is my kind of my mantra in all the work that I do, is that when you love you, that's when other people do too.
Oh, I love that. When you love you, people love you too. You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? When you love you, that's when people love you. You said a lot of wisdom right there, Kimmy. I don't even know where to dive in right there, but I want to say,
And scene. Yeah.
so you said something that really caught my attention. When you love you, that's when other people love you. So I want to start off there because that's interesting, because I think sometimes people don't love themselves enough.
Mm.
And then they wonder why people don't like them or people don't gravitate towards them. What do you think is one of the main one or two reasons why people they don't love you, right? They don't love themselves. What have you seen in just the coaching that you do and helping your clients kind of start believing that for themselves, to love themselves?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think that as we get older, life happens, right? And sometimes not such good things. And a lot of times we get focused on the outside, right? Like the external things around us. Like it could be in the environment, or it's his fault, or it's her fault, or it's my age, it's my height, it's my weight, it's my ethnicity. Like we try to blame other things that have to do with love. But at the end of the day, no matter who I help and where they come from, it always boils down to loving themselves. I'll share a quick story around that. There was a woman who came to me, and, a lot of times people are focused on the end result, right? And she's like, Kimmy, find me my soulmate, And I said, well, I'm happy to help you do that, but there may be some work along the way to help you get there, right? And, she hadn't dated in many, many years. She had a lot of toxic relationships. She was not dressing the part, so to speak, and she was hiding in her clothes in many, many ways. And she just wasn't feeling that sexy confidence. And what was so beautiful, by the end of our coaching, she ended up finding her soulmate. But she said to me, and again, we did a lot of work, right? Like we got her a new style. I did a lot of like internal work. And what makes me unique is that, and we can talk about this in a bit, most people work from the inside out. I actually work from the outside in because I believe that's the quickest gateway into someone's confidence. And it's like a symbiotic relationship, right? And so after we did all this work, she's like, I'm the happiest that I've ever been in my entire life. And I said, really, what's making you happy? And she's like, ironically, here I have this guy, I got my soulmate, but that's not really what's making me happy. I said, what is it? She said, for the first time in my life, I love me. And we both
Wow.
kind of got like teary eyed, right? And I said, that's just so beautiful. She's like, no matter what happens with this guy, and he's definitely like complimenting me and enhancing me, I have me at the end of the day. And that was like the best gift, right? That was just like a small example of how powerful that self-love is. But that word is very esoteric, right? Like people just
But I
throw
love
that
that.
out.
I want to go a little bit deeper in that because
Yeah.
this lady, right? Think about what you just said. We know we're not just in the business of coaching people. Like what Kimmy just said, ladies and gentlemen, she's saving lives. You're like a paramedic. You're like a doctor. I mean, because so many people right now are committing suicide because they're not happy with themselves or they're not happy with some part of their life or they don't love themselves, right? Let's be real. And what you do is you don't just go in there and help them find clothes. You help them, like you save a person's life because so many people right now, they're drowning in just depression, misery, whatever it is. So talking about this client, it doesn't have to be her, but what do you see are one or two main things that keep that person from really like loving themselves at that point, Kimmy, when you start working with them?
Well, it varies. I'm not this kind of cookie cutter approach coach. I don't feel like one size fits all. We're also unique and our journey shapes us, right? So
Yes.
the thing that I do with people, no matter where they come from and what they want, this is the therapist in me because I practiced as a therapist for many, many years, and I can't get away from that because our past is connected to the future and the choices we make and the patterns that get created. And there's always patterns, right, that we develop over time. And that's why I call myself a strategist these days, more than a coach, more than a therapist, because I just believe we all need strategies. And I know you do this too, to help people break patterns. And over the years, we just have this like default button, right? That goes back to what we know, good, bad, or indifferent. It's called the familiarity principle in psychological terms. So if you weren't loved or you had love that was shown to you in a bad way, then later on you'll think that that's what you deserve or that's how you get love, right? And so it might be outside yourself, it might be looking for toxic relationships because that's what you're familiar with. So, no matter what that is for you, it's first understanding where you come from in order to understand where you're going to go. And
Ooh.
then, right? Like then it's plug and play, right? Then I develop a
Yes.
dating plan or like a business plan on what it is you need to do in order to get to where you want to go.
That's a boom. That's a boom moment right there. That was a
Bam!
boom.
Where's your
That's a
sound effects?
boom. Right, let me give you a woo. That's a yeah. That's a let me say this. What Kimmy just dropped was some wisdom. So I love what you just said. Those thought patterns that we have that we carry. And so many times we don't realize that, right? These behaviors, they're modeled in our childhood. They're modeled so at sometime in our life, they're modeled. And a good example of that, and you can kind of correct me as we go along, but I just want say somebody's always a worry wart. Well, say their mom or dad was that worry wart, right? They just carry anxiety. So that every time something happened, they would just had that anxiety was all over the atmosphere. Well, then you start dating this person. We'll just say it's a guy, and this guy's always worrying about the bills. We'll just call him Daniel for it. And you're like, man, you're like, you're dating Dan. Like, why does he always worry? Well, that's the behavior that was modeled to him. And that's what you bring into your life and you bring into your relationship. Is that kind of what I hear you saying, right? Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, what you just described is like an anxious attachment style in relationships, right? Like and because if there was worry early on, then your brain is wired to be worried, right? Like and that just plays out in different ways. So it could be played out where if you don't hear from a guy on Bumble the next day, you freak out, right? Or if
My
the
phone ain't
woman.
ringing. Hey, hold on.
Yeah, right. Like what's going on? What's going on?
T-Mobile, can you check if my phone was working? I haven't got any calls today.
And that's the thing that I really like to simplify things for people because, so I have this formula that I use in helping people. It's called the Charisma Quotient. Yes, it's the name of my podcast, which you are on. And within that formula, there are 3 areas that I look at. Number 1 is your style intelligence, which is how you appear on the outside, right? It's your wardrobe, it's your body language, it's your first impression, it's how you market yourself, which is super, super important. And then I go inward and work on emotional intelligence, which is how we express ourselves. It's the vulnerability, it's the authenticity that we bring forth in relationships and interactions. And then the third pillar is your social intelligence, which is how we manage interpersonal communication. And yes, that includes flirting. So flirting, by the way, is a big part of my business. I believe it's the key to magnetism and charisma and attractiveness that just, like helps with your confidence. So it's a big part of what I talk about and why that's easier to digest, because if we start small in each of these areas, especially when you start on the outside, it builds, right? It builds new patterns, the new way of looking at things, a new perspective of yourself, and then others perceive you differently too. So when clients work with me, often they'll get what I call the charisma glow, and friends and family are like, what did you do? Did you lose weight or something? And they're like, no, I just am happy, And so that's why for me, it's really fun. I mean, yeah, like we can talk about the anxious attachment style, but it's so much easier to, well, let's just start with one thing and practice conversations online and see what it's like to have a good
Wow.
conversation, right? Like, so it's those little things that add up to the big wins.
I'm loving this conversation we're having because it's really, we do. I met you in a mastermind. We're both a part of it. And your vibe was just there. And, just that magnetism, like you're saying, right? Likes attract likes. But what's really catching my attention, what you're saying, because I think somebody listening needs to hear this is wardrobe. The word that keeps popping out in my head that I hear
Oh
you saying
yeah.
is wardrobe, because people, I say this because when you said the wardrobe, what triggered me was this. I remember I was speaking in Sacramento, California, and somebody goes, "You gonna wear a suit?" And I was like, "Am I gonna wear a suit?" And I always wear a suit. And I said, "Well, I don't know." I go, "Probably. That's kind of what I gravitate to, right?" You see it in the back of my
I
branding,
do.
and because I'm a corporate trainer. But then I just said, "Well, maybe it's time to wear something different." So, anyways, I didn't wear a suit that day. So then, next thing you know, they were asking me because they thought I was going to wear a suit. So some of the other speakers wore a suit, but it was interesting. And then as I started going around, people just say, "Well, I don't feel comfortable in a suit." Like they don't even I don't even ask them, and they say, "Well, I don't like. I'm not a suit person." So why would somebody say that, right? Just A, what does a wardrobe say about somebody? And B, just to say I'm a suit person, because I want to get it, I want to understand this. That way it helps me become
Yeah.
more sociable, right? When somebody says, well, I'm just not a suit person, is that just, are they saying because they don't see themselves as that, or there's something that maybe blocks them from seeing themselves wearing a suit? Because to me, I was in the car business for 20 years, loved wearing suits. It gave me the confidence. I saw myself as that selling clothing machine. And then it just made me, it made me feel better about myself. And guess what? When I go eat, somebody opens the door for me because they think I'm important. And not that I wasn't, but it's like,
Damn. Yeah.
yeah, boom, let's go. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm suit guy. So talk to us about that if you don't mind, please.
I love this question, and it's a simple question that has a lot in there, right? And so I'll start with saying image matters. Okay. And I'm not just saying it as this girl who lives in LA and say, oh, just wear this, you'll look fabulous and you'll all be better. I mean, first of all, I'm from Chicago, so I can't even say that, it's an LA thing. And this actually pertains to my journey, and I can get into this in a bit, but what we know, and this is just research based, is that the definition of image is the way people perceive you, and that determines how people treat you. That's how powerful it is. So the minute you walk into a room, people are judging you in that first impression. First of all, now it's only 7 seconds. I blame Bumble and Tinder for that. However, it's probably even quicker. Like 2 years ago, it was 30 seconds. But in that 7 seconds, there are 2 things that are happening in the brain that are causing that judgment call. Number 1 is your clothes. Number 2 is your attitude, which is like what's written on your face, your nonverbals, your body language. So what you say isn't even as important as how you show up, especially like as people are getting to
That's
know you.
let me see. I gotta give you a boom for that one. That's a say that again. You gotta say that again.
Yes, I was
What?
getting bummed. I didn't hear
Yes, no,
the
say that
boom.
again. Say that again. What you just said about how you show up. Say that again.
What you say isn't even as important as how you show up.
Yeah, boom, baby. That is so. Y'all gotta write that down, ladies and gentlemen. What you say is not important as how you show up. Image matters. Listen to what Kimmy's saying. Image matters. You don't have to wear a suit. That's not what I'm saying, but you do have to have some presentation image to you. But I'm not the expert. I'm gonna let Kimmy tell us. Tell us more, Kimmy, because this is good stuff.
Yeah, well, and this relates to everything, like in dating and speaking, actually. And I know you do a ton of speaking, and I do too. And there were some studies done that when they looked at people, and when speakers would walk into the room, people were already deciding whether or not they were going to listen to that speaker or buy from that speaker, if they were selling something at the end of it. And so what that means is that the way you look will shape the way that people will trust you, buy things from you, find you attractive, right? And here's the thing, because a lot of people roll their eyes and say, "Oh, Kimmy, this is so superficial. People don't like me for me, then forget them." And it's like, look, this is not
I
changing who
love
you
what you're
are.
saying. I love what you're saying.
I no, yeah, I'm going off of here, right?
Yeah,
Like,
go, go, go. I'm gonna be like,
I'm very
yeah. She's on
passionate
a
about
roll,
this
baby. She's
stuff.
on a roll over here.
I'm very passionate about this stuff because it's not changing who you are. It's marketing yourself so that somebody gets to know who you are. And why this is so important is that, gosh, if you knew that you could put on a different pair of clothes or move a different way in your clothes, why wouldn't you do that? Right? Like, there's so many things in life that take a while to overcome. Like we were talking about before, the deeper stuff. This is instant, right? Like when I do makeovers and people walk out of the dressing room and they're standing a little taller and people are noticing them, that matters, right? And that directly correlates into somebody's confidence and it keeps that going. So going back to your suit question, it was a long way of answering
No,
your
I love this.
question.
Please.
Right? Like the suit thing is really important because for you, that's your signature brand. So like when we're talking about businesses and branding, like you can look at Mark Zuckerberg or anybody who's like anybody, and there's a certain style that they wear. Like you're like, oh, that's that style, right? And it's good because you'll be memorable. And so people who are commenting on that, they're noticing that that's your thing. And by them saying, oh, well, I could never wear a suit, that's neither here nor there. The fact that they're noticing that you are wearing the suit is what's even more important. Now, when
Ooh,
it
I
comes,
love that perspective. I never thought
it's
about it like
true.
that.
Oh, yeah. They're noticing you because you're right. Like people will open the door for you. You look like money. If you're selling something, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, he knows what he's talking about. I'll share a really funny story. You'll
Oh, I love
appreciate this.
this. I'm down.
This is funny.
If I wasn't on camera, we weren't using the film, I'd be taking notes, looking down. But now we're using the video, so but I'm
I
gonna go
know.
back
No.
and listen to this episode for sure.
No, this is a funny story. So I was a keynote speaker at this event that was for single ladies, right? And it was a luncheon and there were like 100 women there. And I decided to do something kind of funny. I went up there in my frumpy mommy clothes, which is part of my story. Okay. So before wearing red and doing all this, I like came from Chicago and I was this like traditional mom and therapist. And then divorce happened and I felt like crap and I didn't know what to do to get out of my own way. So I ended up going shopping and everything changed. And I had what I call a red dress moment where my confidence grew and everything changed. And that's really the crust of my, business. But anyway, so I decided to wear my mommy clothes and I had no makeup on and I had like this frumpy and I had my Birkenstocks. I'm like shuffling up on stage and people are whispering and they're like, my God, who is that? And they knew I was talking about image and style. And so as I was telling my story, I start stripping, and underneath I had my dress, and then I put my heels on, and then I put my earrings on, and started putting lipstick on, and everyone is like looking at me like, OMG, and they got what I was doing. And I said at the end of everyone clapped at the end. And I said, okay, let's come clean. Like, what did you think of me when I first went on stage? And this one woman raised her hand and she's like, Kimmy, I got to tell you, I was about to walk out. I was like, who the F is she? Like to tell me how to dress. Right. And so it was a big like aha moment for everyone, knowing how we all judge, but it's something to embrace, not like roll our eyes out, knowing that we can be our best versions of ourselves. We just have to know like what that is. Right. And that really will make a difference in the way we move through the world.
I love what you're saying. Wow. So you brought up something that, you opened up your heart here with us. You told us you went through the divorce. You were kind of lost. What made you want to be, you went from a therapist and now right. I'm assuming you were doing this full time in Chicago. Now you're a strategist coach/coach. What made you want to be that coach to say, or that strategist? Where did the red dress movement come from? I mean, of course you had it for yourself, and usually that's where it stops for most people. But what gave you the
Mhm.
momentum to say, well, maybe I got something here? Or how did you onboard your first client? Because I think there's so many people right now that are not happy. I was just talking to
Yeah.
somebody here this morning. Like I said, we were doing a video for our commercial for our new footage. And it's like you see the people that are there and like, oh, well, I don't like working here. Right. And I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm just listening to them. Right. But there's so many people that say that, but they don't do anything about it. What made you just take that step?
Well, like I said, I mean, long story longer, going back to that moment, you know, I I didn't think I'd ever do this. Like, what? A good girl from Chicago having the picket fence and the dog and the husband and, living the traditional life. Like, if you were to ask me back then if I would be a dating coach and an image expert, I would have laughed. And so I always say like we're our own best teachers always. But and adversity are gifts in disguise, right? Like I truly believe that. But when you're going through it, it's hell. Like I didn't see it at the time. I mean, when we moved here to LA and the record just kind of stopped, my life before me was just like, now what do I do? Like I'm supposed to go out, first of all, get a job, date as a single mom with two young kids. I didn't feel worthy. And I know you do a lot of work around worthiness and, what people deserve. And I did not feel worthy of just, anything. And so it was a very dark moment. And my clothes reflected it. This was kind of that aha moment for me, because up until then, I always used to work from the inside out. I truly believed you had to just do all the work, do all the work, but I couldn't move. I was literally paralyzed, and I knew everything up here, and I did the work. I needed something different. I needed to take action. And so I just remember that moment looking in the mirror one day and I was just horrified. I mean, I was still wearing nursing bras and I wasn't nursing my kids any longer. I'm like,
Oh,
this has got to stop, right? So I go shopping and I think I'm up leveling myself, right? Because I lost weight. I didn't even see my new body. And I'm gathering all the same clothes, all black, all three sizes too big. And this personal shopper came up to me. I call her now my angel. And she said, ma'am, I've been watching you and I really think you should try this on. And she holds up this red dress, kind of like the shirt. And it looked like three sizes too small. And I said, ma'am, that is so sweet of you, but that's not my size. And it's really not my color. And she says, honey, it is your color. It is your size. Try it on. Bam, like that. Like it was, and that was my red dress moment. And it was like she hit me over the head with that red dress. And I needed that. I needed to hear it. And I took the dress, I put it on, I twirl around like Cinderella. I look in the mirror. I was like, wow, I, I'm a princess. Like I just hadn't seen myself like that for
well,
so long,
You're
right?
you said that, and I want to ask this question because I think sometimes I've heard both sides of it. Not exactly what I'm going to say, but sometimes you hear people say, "Well, you got to believe in yourself before other people believe in you," right? You hear this,
Yeah.
which is it's true to say, but sometimes what I just heard you say was someone gave you an outside perspective of how beautiful you were, but you didn't see it for yourself, right? So that totally goes against what I just said, right? You got to believe in
Yep.
yourself, because at that moment, it's like Kimmy didn't believe in herself, but this woman was kind of your angel, and
Yep.
she says, "Try it on." You're like, "No." So sometimes you do need that outside perspective for someone to see the beauty or to believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. Would you say that?
It's so true. I love what you just said. And it's full circle. It goes back to what we said in the beginning of the show about the self-love. I realized in that moment, I didn't like who I saw. And it went deeper than just, the nursing bras and the big clothes. It was but it was a true reflection, and what we
Yeah.
reflect on the outside often is how we feel on the inside, or it's incongruent, right? Because we could feel awesome on the inside, we're doing all this work, but yet we're not marketing that. So there's needs to be some congruency with both. And yeah, so I do believe that. And when I bought that dress, I will tell you, I still didn't totally believe it. Like you said, I had to marinate in that dress and get really used to being seen, because what I realized is the black clothes was a cloak that was keeping me invisible from you alien men, because I was scared. I was
Wow.
scared. I was scared of being seen. I was scared because then what? Right? Like if I really was to be seen, then what do I do? And so,
There was
yeah.
attention that's going to be coming to you, and you're like, "I'm not used to this attention." Like, oh, like, hey, like, what are you looking at?
Well, yeah, because I didn't think I was worthy, right? Like it goes back to the
Yes.
self-love. I'm like, why would you be looking at me? I'm just a frumpy mom, because that was my mindset. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a big defining moment for myself. And then I started getting used to it, right? And then I kind of liked it. And then, new suitors began to come my way. And then it was just this kind of snowball effect that catapulted me into what I do now, which I just, shared. So it's been a yellow brick road, right? Like with each twist and turn, like Dorothy, I kept putting like tools in my toolbox and helping people along the way.
So how
And
long ago was this,
it
Kimmy?
is. Oh my gosh. Now I'm going to age myself, but this was,
5, 10 years. You don't
I'd
have
say
to know.
about 15, no, 15 years,
15
15
years.
years, the journey. But then I was a therapist before that for 10 years. So
Yeah.
my career has changed. And that's what I want to say to anyone who is thinking, oh, well, I have to know it all. I have to discover myself. I have to like land where I want to land. It's like life brings you curveballs, and it's what you do with it is what matters, because you're always going to shift, you're always going to change. You just have to focus on now. And that was a mistake that I made, because I was so focused on, well, what about this, what about this, so worried about the future that I lost the present. And I think that's how I built my business for the rest of the time, is that I just embraced everything that I went through. And honestly, that's why I feel like I can help others now, because I've been through it, right? Like I'm sure I helped people as a therapist before I went through it, but it's so much more meaningful because I'm connected to it.
Yeah, it's kind of like you find that financial coach, and okay, like I get a kick out of it because I've one of the things I've asked financial coaches or financial planners, I ask them, well, what's your net worth? What do you mean? Like, yeah, what's your net worth? Like, you're asking me, you want to help me with my finances? What's your net
Right.
worth? Well, I don't have to tell you. Well, guess what? But it's how are you going to help me become successful, say in finances, if you're not even successful? And that's what Kimmy's saying is right. She's been through the point where she was down. So if you need help in your relationship, if you need help, maybe you're a divorcee and you need that guidance, that help, then you Kimmy, somebody you need to reach out, because she's been down that path. I mean, I thank you for opening your heart, Kimmy, because you're dropping some wisdom here. Let me ask you this: when makes you distinctive and unique? Right? We all have that
Hmm.
uniqueness. We all have a distinctiveness to us. What makes Kimmy Seltzer distinctive and unique?
It's not that I like deep dish pizza and I live in LA. No, I seriously, I think that there's a lot of different things that make me unique, but part of it is what I've just shared with you, in that I'm very holistic in the way I approach, people and situations. People, in fact, ask me all the time to give me like, how many months should I date this person before I get in a relationship? Or how many dates until I kiss someone? And like people want a formula. And again, like I don't think that one size fits all. We all just are so different. So I love using my image consulting and my therapy background and the dating coaching to have a holistic approach in helping people outside and in.
I love that. So for the person that doesn't know what holistic means, give us a little bit more depth in that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking at different modalities and ways of helping you move forward, right? Because some people are like as a therapist, for instance, people might just be like a cognitive behavioral therapist, right? And they just have that one modality that helps people. I just, first of all, I get too bored to just do one modality, like, to be honest. And I also have a theater background. I have an improv background. So I often warn people that I may make you do some goofy things to get you out of your head. So like when I go out with people, so I go out with people and I help them flirt. I am like a wing girl and I go shopping. I'm kind of like Hitch meets What Not to Wear, if you think of that. And before the pandemic, I was doing quite a lot of it. Now I help people virtually as well. But, to me, that's what gets people moving is the action piece, right? And so the
Yes.
holistic approach is just looking at different things you can do to get the results. It's not just like, oh, sitting there and talking. It's like, okay, why don't you put on this dress? Why don't you go practice making eye contact and then come back to me and then we'll start with the next thing. So it really is about the strategies too.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying because you're just, man, you're dropping so much wisdom. And kind of you said this. I meant to comment with something you said earlier, and like I really feel somebody needs to hear this. Is when Kimmy first put on that red dress, she didn't embody it at that moment. She accepted it, she received it, she kind of embraced it a little bit, but the embody wasn't there. And somebody needs to hear this because you put yourself in a new, and she put what Kimmy did with the new dresses, she put herself in a new environment, a new image. And somebody here watching this video or listening to us on iTunes, you put yourself in a new environment right away. You said, I don't like it, but you didn't even you didn't even give yourself an opportunity to really embrace it and embody it. And that's what Kimmy did. That's where the true transformation came, because remember what she said? She was wearing the black dresses. She had the black outfits on, and somebody outside said, hey, this red one's yours. And she's like, no, it ain't. Yes, it is. No, it ain't. Try it. Okay. But she tried it on her. She said, well, but it took you a while when you embodied it. You're like, hey, I look pretty sexy in this red dress. Did you not?
Oh my God, totally. I was like, who is that?
You're like, whoa, who's that girl, Kimmy, coming down the street?
I usually play, I'm too sexy for my shirt. Too sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and what you're saying is so true. I'm glad you're highlighting that, because what I tell people all the time, and this is how I define confidence. Confidence simply is experience. I really believe that. Like, I don't think there's one person out there who's not confident, but there's usually an area that we don't feel confident in because either one, we haven't had practice at it or exposure, or two, it's been negative exposure. Like we haven't had the positive experience around it. So how do you get more confident in that area? You practice. I mean, it's just like a sport, right? Like if you don't think you're good at flirting.
That's so simple. How do you do it? You just practice.
Just practice. Well, but to your point with my red dress, I had to practice wearing that darn red dress, right? Like I didn't believe it. And I really called it a costume at that moment, right? And like Halloween, how sometimes the shy girls wear these like cat outfits and they become vixens, like there's a lot of research that have been done about that. And actually there's a term called enclothed cognition that people did studies on, meaning that you will perform differently when you're wearing something differently. So that's why I know that this stuff works. It's not just this like airy fairy, elementary thing. It really does matter. Yet I don't think it's emphasized enough in ways of importance when you're trying to attract someone, when you're trying to build a business. Like it all goes hand in hand.
Well, you know what? I want you to do us a favor, because right now, whether somebody lost a loved one or they got divorced or they got just something happened in their relationship where they're a solo woman, a single man, single woman. They're listening to this podcast. They're giving up. They're like, yeah, but Kimmy, I want to believe you, but that's just your fairy tale, right? That's where they're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
You need to look in the camera and give that person, man or woman right now, speak to their heart and soul and give them a word of encouragement. Take a minute or two and just really just open up your heart and pour into them right now, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I love that. And I will say to you listening that I so understand that feeling of hopelessness, that could there be a life after divorce or life after, or even if you've never been in a relationship, trying to think of one that's healthy, wherever you're at. But know that the only way to find something different is to do just small things that can build your confidence. Because I think the hardest thing, and I remember this, people would just be like, oh, just start dating, or oh, just be more confident, oh, just do this. It's like, well, what does that mean? If I knew how to be more confident, I would do it. But what's easier, and this is what I do with people, is to just do digestible little action steps that will build that confidence and give you that courage and hope to move forward. So if you haven't dated, what if you put a profile up right now and just practice having conversations? Like, don't worry about dating. Don't worry about dating. Just get a profile up and start interacting with the opposite sex. Like, it just starts with those small steps, really. And if you need help, I mean, honestly, like, that's what I'm here for. I think that accountability, that outside person, and Daniel, I know you're the same with people. Like, it does take sometimes that outside accountability and motivation to keep you moving forward.
I love what you just said. Think about that. Just sometimes we think of the big picture, right? We think to the future, like you said, too much. Just worry about the present. Today is a gift. That's why it's called the present, ladies and gentlemen. Let me say it again. Today is a gift. And what Kemi's saying is conversation. And no relationship, whether it's business, attraction, friendship, no relationship starts without a conversation. And you have to have a conversation. Are you having a conversation? Is what the question is. So I love what you're saying. So Kimmy, as we're coming towards the end of the show, I want to ask you this question. What is a quote or a scripture that you rely on that when adversity gets tough in life and business, what do you rely on? What's something that you say to yourself that you can share with our audience today?
Okay, it's not very sexy, I will say that. And again, it goes back to the simplicity, but it's Nike's "Just Do It" slogan. Like,
Hey, I'll take that. I'll take that
honestly,
as a no. That's it. Hey, sometimes simple is better, right? KISS. Keep it,
I
keep
like
it
to keep
simple.
it simple. Like, I mean, it sounds simple, yet I think it's one of the hardest things for people to do is to take action, take bold action, especially because fear will combat that every single time. And it takes a lot of courage to combat that fear because that's what prevents people from change. Hands down, fear, 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 fear. There's so many fears. I just did a webinar on this. But if you just do it and stay present, that's really half the battle. So
I
that's my
love.
mantra.
So just to kind of wrap up our conversation, image matters. What you wear, like Kimmy's saying, it starts on the outside. Really, like I love what you're saying because I'm a big believer of that because I feel better when I dress up, when I wear not necessarily a suit, but just like you're saying, I bought some salmon colored shorts here about a month ago.
Oh, cute. I
And
want
my
to see
wife goes, my
those.
wife goes, "You're gonna buy those?" I'm like, "I think they're like." She goes, "Well, I think you can pull them off." She goes, "You never buy stuff like that." I'm like, "Yeah," because this is the true story. I got to share this, right? I
Yeah.
was I was on a I was on a dead hunt. I wanted some jean shorts. We went to no, I'm not even exaggerating. We went to the mall. We went to another mall. I only found one or two pair of jean shorts. They were all shredded. I was looking for a pair of just nice, clean, dark denim jean shorts. Couldn't find one if my life depended on it. And I said, well, I guess maybe it's a sign God doesn't want me to buy some jean shorts. I turned around and we're there, and I'm like, "Hon, hey, what about those?" And I was kind of kidding, right? She goes, "I think you could do that." She goes, "You wouldn't buy those." Like, you know what? I kind of like them. And I went over there. I tried them on. I happened to be wearing like a white shirt with the salmon, right, with that salmon color.
Oh, yeah.
I said, "Man, this looks pretty nice. I can pull this off." But it was getting out of my comfort zone, getting out of the environment. Like you said, that familiarity. You have
Mhm.
to do that. So I'm glad we had this conversation. So I want you to do this. What is the best business advice that you can give us that you've gotten that you can share with our audience? And then I want you to tell us how can we get a hold of you?
Oh, yeah. I would say, I mean, it goes along with the whole like taking bold action, but there's no such thing as perfection. I learned that early on. I remember just being paralyzed trying to get a website up or, doing all this research before I get my first client or, oh my God, I don't. I'm not ready for my first speech or whatever, my first blog, like whatever it was on my journey. And really it is about just getting it up there. It is about the taking action, because it's never going to be perfect. And in fact, imperfection is perfection. And that is how we learn and we grow. But if you don't do anything, that's, to me, the failure, right? Like that's where you just start like plateauing.
That's a boom, baby, right there, right? Imperfection is perfection. Somebody needs to hear that. Imperfection is perfection. Because sometimes think about, you know what came to mind when you said that? Where's that darn thing at? I'm out of them, I guess. I don't see them, but those Post-its.
Yeah.
Post-its were invented by accident. They weren't trying to invent
Really?
Post-its. They were trying to invent something else, and the fact that it didn't stick, they said, well, it's temporary. Maybe we can use it. And guess what? 3M invented Post-it, that a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar business, because of the imperfection. It was perfectly used for something else. So remember that. That's Kimmy right there. Quote that. That imperfection is going to be perfectly used somewhere else where you didn't even expect it. I love that. How do we get a hold of you, my friend? How do we get a hold of you? How do we find you? We'll put that in the show notes, of course.
I know. I'm all over the place. If you just type in Kimmy Seltzer, KIMMYSELTZER, like seltzer water, because that's my social handles, right? At Kimmy Seltzer, but it's also my website, kimmyseltzer.com. And you can find me on my podcast, and Daniel will be on it, Charisma Quotient. And you can hear me there. And I talk about all kinds of things, from love to connection to confidence, all that jazz. And if you have a direct question, I will say, just go to askkimmy.com. It's probably the best way of just getting to me directly. And I'm happy to gift anybody. Like if people are ready to take that action, my free style guides, like that's something small that you can do by just downloading my body type.
Maybe I want to get that, right?
I was going to say
the style part, not for the married part, but the style part.
No, everybody needs it. Married, single, whatever you're working on. It teaches you about what your body type is. And then my guides go over what clothes flatter your figure and what clothes to stay away from. So if you go to my site, you can download it from my site, but I'm also happy to give you a link and put in the show notes as well.
Yeah, send us that link. We'll definitely take care of that with your bio and everything. So awesome. Well, man. Well, as we come to the end of another show, this is Daniel Gomez Inspires. We've had an amazing guest here with Miss Kimmy Seltzer. And if you're stuck in life and business, we want to help you with our Shield of Fate coaching. Go to www.danielgomezglobal.com. That's www.danielgomezglobal.com. Send us a message there. Do our free assessment for entrepreneurship. And we want to give you a 45-minute discovery session for tuning in today in our Daniel Gomez Inspire show with Miss Kimmy Seltzer. That's a wrap for this week's show. If you need help, we're here to help you, ladies and gentlemen. You're not in this alone. So until next week, we'll see you here on the Daniel Gomez Inspire show. Woo! This is Daniel Gomez, and thank you so much for tuning into our show today. We'd love your feedback. Please drop us a comment, and thank you for leaving us a review. Don't forget to subscribe to our show and share this episode with a friend. And my free gift for listening to our show today is a copy of my best-selling book, You Were Born to Fly. To get your free copy, go to danielgomezinspires.com and get your copy today. That's danielgomezinspires.com. And to elevate your life and business even more, follow me on social media at Daniel Gomez Inspires on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Together, we will discover the key that unlocks your confidence.